Hello and welcome to Series 8, Episode 7 of In Suspense, a podcast and vodcast for fans and writers of crime fiction. I'm Nikki Smith and I'm here today with my co-host, the lovely Lauren North.
Hello, everyone. In our last episode, Leslie and I spoke to Simon McCleave about TV scripts and writing for Hollywood. It was really interesting because we often see authors make the jump to script writing. So it was interesting to listen to him do it the other way around, I thought.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was fascinating, actually, and I think that I'm always quite envious when people say they're script writing in LA because I just think, oh, that sounds really glamorous and amazing, but actually, it's a bit of an automatic assumption, isn't it? That it's such a glamorous life, and it was just really interesting hearing about the kind of downsides of the stress and the pressure and that kind of environment.
Yeah, and how competitive it is and how mean everyone is. And I think it's the same with acting as well, isn't it? You get it's all really cutthroat. And then people come into writing and they're like, welcome, 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 come into us. We will give you a hug. We love you. Let us help you. So yeah, the publishing industry is much nicer, I think, than other industries, which is good.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, I think it is. So, on today's episode, which is actually the last in our current series, we're having a little break for over Easter.
Are we having a break though, Nikki? It feels like we're jumping straight back in, actually.
We'll come to that.
We're back soon.
But on today's episode, we're going to be talking to Robert Gold about his new novel called 11 Liars, which I think you can see behind me here. And because Robert also works in sales for one of the major publishers, we're going to be chatting to him about how publishers sell books to retailers, which I think is going to be absolutely fascinating. But before we bring Robert on, I want to hear all your news and how things are going with you, Lauren. Obviously, you've had a massively busy couple of weeks with Publication Day and the launch event for The Ugly Truth. And I think you're about to have another busy couple of weeks, aren't you?
Yeah, it is. It has been busy. It's been wonderful. I just want to apologize to anyone who listens to other podcasts as well as ours that I have been on all of them chatting about The Ugly Truth. So how boring for you all. Sorry. I promise not to talk about it on this one. It's been really great. It's been really busy. There's all highs and lows, I think, of publication week, which everybody knows about, a month, in fact. But overall, it's just been a really wonderful experience to have all that exposure and to see my book out in the shops and have people send me pictures of it. It's been really exciting. So yeah, I think it's quite lucky that I have had structural edits as well. I know that's awful, but I think if I was just writing a first draft, I'd have just ditched it and just have been on social media the whole time. But I think it's been nice knowing I've had the pressure of structural edits to keep me going, and I've had to not look at social media. I've had to just work, which has been really good. I think it's a good balance. But yeah, there's been some tears, I think, along the way, just all the pressure. You know what it's like. But it's been wonderful. What about you? What have you been up to? Because you've also been busy.
Yes, well, I think we've both been busy, haven't we? And Leslie has as well. We're all in the middle of structural edits at the moment, so it just feels a little like we're on a roller coaster. And I think kind of telling ourselves every morning it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, and not really sure whether it is going to be fine or not. But obviously, it was lovely to come to your book launch at the amazing Goldsboro Books, and we also both went to Trevor and Kate Simmons had their launch as well. So that was lovely to go to. That felt like a couple of very nice evenings out. But yeah, I think really our focus at the moment is just on the structural edits, and I've also just had my cover finalised for the beach party. Yes, which is very exciting. It looks very like the proof, but
I actually disagree. I think it is. I mean, the proof's beautiful. I think the cover is a whole new level of beauty, frankly. So, when do we get to all see it publicly?
I'm not sure, actually. I mean, yes, I'll let you know, and then hopefully on the next one of the next episodes, I can give you a quick preview of it. But so I think at the moment it's just heads down for the next couple of weeks and just get those structural edits done.
Yes. But how brilliant is it that the next time we record this, I'll be writing a different book and you'll be doing something else as well. And we'll just be doing like it ends. So, you know,
it does. It does. It absolutely does.
I think I'm just at that point where I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm already now plotting what I'm going to do when my life's back in action. I'm like writing a book.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you could see my house at the moment, it's just hysterical. There is just stuff everywhere. It's filthy. I haven't touched anything for days, well, weeks really. And it's yes, I think every author probably feels like this, but it's fun times.
Yes, it is fun, isn't it? Yes. Our topic today, that's what we were going to talk about. So how do publishers sell books to retailers? Because I think we should probably talk about it, because some of our listeners won't know, because I certainly didn't know when I was first published. I just thought you got a publisher and then your book just landed in all these magical places. And that's actually not how it works.
No, that's exactly the same as me, Lauren. Before I was an author, I just thought you wrote a book and then it ended up in a bookshop, but actually that is completely not the case at all. I think obviously some authors they write kind of digitally or digital first books, so they mainly just get to see their books on Amazon print on demand, which is a physical copy, and they can get those into shops, but it's not in the same way as kind of a traditional publisher who will basically try and get your book in bulk volume into a particular retailer.
It's so great though still with the digitals, because when I was first with the digital back in the day 2018, there was no print on demand. Well, I mean it existed, but they wouldn't do it. And I think it's brilliant now that the digitals, even you can just get access to those books. So many people still read in print, and it is brilliant for an author to get their hands on
yes.
books. So and yeah, like you said, your local independent bookshop will still take them. It's just that you probably won't see them necessarily first of all in supermarkets, but it does happen. Like
it does.
Some of the ones who sell really well obviously going to get in there, so you never really know what's going to happen. But yes, I didn't realize that the aim is supermarkets is like the big cheese, the big aim, because they, like you say, they buy it in these huge bulk numbers, which is much more than I think Waterstones or the independent bookshops will buy it in. But obviously shelf space is shrinking in supermarkets and has been for a few years. So it's really tricky. Like there's maybe 10 hardback slots, if that, and maybe 20 to 50 paperback slots, I think, in most supermarkets. Maybe I'm being even more too generous there. And a lot of them are going to be some of the big authors' backlists as well. So actual spaces for new authors, it's really, really tough. And there is a bit of a double-edged sword as well, in that if you do get into supermarkets, it is really amazing and it's so exciting. If your book doesn't sell that well, then you could be in a position where they're not going to be as excited or even offering you a space on the next book. And so it's amazing. I mean, I love to be in supermarkets, but it's there's pressure there as well, I think, to see those books sell. So yeah,
absolutely. Yes. Well, I think our guest today is going to hopefully shed some light on this topic, so I think it's probably time to welcome Robert Gold to In Suspense.
Yay.
Welcome, Robert Gold, to In Suspense. I'm going to go ahead and read a bit of your bio so our listeners can find out a little bit more about you. So originally from Harrogate in North Yorkshire, Robert Gold began his career as an intern at the American broadcaster CNN, based in Washington, D.C. He returned to Yorkshire to work for the retailer Asda, becoming the chain's nationwide book buyer. He now works in sales for a UK publishing company. And you live in Putney. Your hometown serves as the inspiration for the fictional town of Hadley in your thrillers 12 Secrets, which has been an Irish Times bestseller and a Richard and Judy pick for the winter 2022, and 11 Liars, which I think people can see behind me there, which has published last week in hardback, and it will be coming out in paperback in November 2023. So, Robert, I was hooked when I read the blurb for this book. It really pulls you in, and I've read it, and it's a total page turner. So could you maybe just tell our listeners a little bit about what it's about?
Hey, thank you, Nikki. The book is about a returning character called Ben Harper, who's the main protagonist. And he's coming home one night to his home in Hadley, and he spots a fire in the community centre at the back of the local church. He runs towards the fire and finds that somebody's trapped inside. He frees the person who disappears into Hadley Woods, but in the following day, the remains of the body is discovered beneath the burnt out community centre. And the story goes from there. As in my first book, 12 Secrets, set in the same town, now 11 Liars, there's lots of secrets and lies hidden within the community and the different characters. So we meet lots of new characters in 11 Liars, which is great. It's nice to expand the community and go into different parts of the town. But once again, there's lots of secrets that hopefully by the end get all pulled together.
Yes, they do. And it's had some fantastic reviews. Congratulations on your publication day last week. It's such a pacey read. And as well as having a great plot, I thought you really drilled down into the characters. So by the end of the book, your readers really understand Danny as a character, as well, of course, as the journalist Ben Harper. It's obviously a sequel, as you said, to your debut 12 Secrets. So I'd love to know how you found writing the second book over writing the first book, and it being a sequel, and all that sort of muddled in together. How did you find it?
It's very different feeling writing a second book. So the overall, I think lots of people that want to be writers, and I'm one of those people that thought for 20 years, I'd love to write a book, and then eventually you get round to it, or you get the opportunity, and but I'd written a number of sort of things before. But you sort of write those in hope rather than expectation, your first book. And so your first book absolutely is written in hope. And when I wrote 12 Secrets, I wrote it during 2019, and literally sort of sat down on the 1st of January and said, okay, I'm going to write it by Christmas. And I made myself work. I had obviously a full-time job. And so I sort of worked every single weekend to say, right, I'm going to get it done. But there's an enjoyment in that, and you enjoy the process. And I think you have to enjoy writing full stop. You have to enjoy the stories. And so that was the process of writing the first one. And then suddenly the brilliant thing was, my wonderful publishers, Little Brown, they bought 2 books. So the first one, 12 Secrets, was already written. And then once 12 Secrets published, they're like, okay, well, we'll see you in a year. If you could bring the next book, off you go. And so suddenly you write with a very different feeling at that point, because it's going to be published. And so there's a different type of pressure, and knowing people are going to write it, and you've got a publishing team sort of waiting, and they're saying, how's it coming on? I'm like, I've got 30,000 words done. Don't worry, it's coming on. But it's such a different feeling. And so there's a different pressure, particularly at the beginning, I think, just to get started, and you're not writing in hope and in expectation that same way, you're knowing it's going to be written. And then in the wider context, in terms of readers, I absolutely wanted a book that readers could pick up without having read 12 Secrets. So I hope that it absolutely stands alone, and that was my aim. And the 2 main characters are ongoing characters. There's an investigative journalist, Ben, and a police officer, Danny, and they work together. But again, so in a way, the challenge was to get people up to speed. So I aim at the beginning, without it being too clunky, saying, this is what happened in the first book, just sort of trying to drop it in. And so it forms part of the story. And I used, if you like, a device. Ben's a journalist, and he was recording a podcast about the first book. And so it was easy to reference back to sort of what had happened and what Ben was doing now and what had happened in the past. And so you could get up to speed quite quickly in terms of Ben and Danny and Ben and Danny's relationship and where that was going to go. So hopefully you can come to 11 Liars without any background knowledge. As I say, and also there's lots of different characters as well that pop up along the way.
Yeah, well, you did it actually. We hadn't read. I hadn't read 12 Secrets. I don't think you have, Nikki. So yeah, it worked really well, and the podcast was a really great method for that.
Yeah. And it's funny hearing you talk about, I think, people who write, authors that write series, there's a real advantage and also a disadvantage to doing that, because you've got your characters, and you obviously know your characters when you come to write the second book inside out. But that whole kind of how to drip feed that information into a second book without making it boring, for those people who've read it before. And as you say, being able to pick up a book where you haven't read the first one and still understand it. There's a real skill, I think, to doing that. And I loved it. I loved 11 Liars. So I will be going back to read 12 Secrets as well.
Thank you very much.
But I thought you really explored that relationship between Ben and Danny incredibly well. And obviously, I don't want to give anything away plot wise, but I loved kind of how close they get throughout the novel. And you've deliberately left a couple of plot threads open, I thought, at the end of the novel. So, are you writing a third one?
I am indeed. In fact,
Yeah.
on publication day, my publishers announced a third one, 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Good.
So 10 seconds will publish it this time next year. So it's on its way. Strangely enough, I've got a day off my real job today, and I'm busy here literally every spare moment working on 10 seconds. So yes, 10 seconds is coming, and we'll publish next March, hopefully.
Brilliant.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and you've got like a ready-made start to every title now as well for 12 books. So I don't know what you're going to do after that. But
I think it gets harder maybe. But at the moment, yeah, I'm sticking with it, and 10 seconds is definitely.
I love it. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I do.
Connection to the books.
Yeah, it's really good.
And so, as Nikki said, you modelled Hadley, the fictional town your books are set in, on Putney, where you actually live. Do you think it helps to have an actual town in your head when you're writing, even a fictional place, to sort of ensure the references stay consistent? You know, what are the benefits of having it fictional though versus it being actually Putney?
I think. Hey, lots of writers have all got different strengths. There's very few writers that are brilliant at everything. And so I think, particularly again in your first novel, you look for things that might help you. So I sort of didn't set it out deliberately. I think, both 12 Secrets and 11 Lives have got a lot of plot, a lot of twists and turns, which is what I set out to do. I want them to be entertaining. That's what books are meant to be, an entertainment. And then for me, in terms of location, thinking, okay, I've got all this plot to handle and characters to handle, that actually the location, to have something that was sort of based on reality, was a nice thing. It did make it a little bit easier, because I could imagine it. At times I literally, particularly in 11 Lives, actually, there's quite a bit done by the river and going on by the boathouses. And I would literally go and walk down by the river and look at the boathouses and imagine how things might play out. And so actually having something that was based on reality made that quite nice. So in my mind, it's all sort of real places, but are adapted. And the reason why I did that is because I think if I'd sort of used Putney exactly, it wouldn't have quite connected, as it were, and then I'd wanted to move places around. I think back in, Ruth Rendell was an amazing author in her time, and she set a lot of her books from where she lived. And Ruth, they wouldn't be fictionalized, it would be real North London. But then if you tried to follow a map based on Ruth Rendell's books, you'd get lost very, very rapidly. So she'd sort of reinvent the pathways. So when I've done that, I've done the same in Putney, but I've made it a fictional town. And the neighbouring village, as it's called, the village of Barnes, which is next by Putney, is St Marnham, is again sort of reimagined.
That's very clever. Yes, I think otherwise also you risk getting irate readers writing to you saying,
correct,
you don't turn left at the end of here, you have to turn right because that's not where the boathouse is and things. So yes, very sensible. But I mean, I live in Guildford, so I've obviously been to Putney and Wimbledon a lot and things, and you can recognise it definitely. But it's fictional as well. So and I read that you co-wrote 3 James Patterson titles in 2016 for his Bookshot series. So I just wondered how that came about and what you think the advantages and disadvantages are on writing novels collaboratively as opposed to on your own.
So I'm taking those 2 questions. How it came about. So I've worked in the publishing industry for the same publisher for over 20 years now. And I worked with James Patterson a lot during that time and talked to him a lot about ideas and books. And he was doing these short book series, and a number of those were generated by our UK business, and working with him is basically like pitching ideas. And so I had a series of ideas I pitched, didn't know it was from me. It was pitched by the publisher, and fortunately he loved the ideas. And I think I probably had the advantage of, obviously, I'd worked with him so long, so I knew what worked in the James Patterson world. And the way that leads on to your second question, which is, so writing with somebody like James Patterson he's amazing. I mean, he's without a doubt the best storyteller in the world, and he's just amazing the way he tells stories. He can move stories forward, and every single page tells you something about the plot or the characters. But it's in his style, and so to be a James Patterson co-author, you can't suddenly come along and think, right, I'm going to be Ian McEwan. You've got to be James Patterson. And working, and that's the joy of working with him. So absolutely, you have to adapt to his style, which is, in a way, the main reason why I was lucky enough to work with him on those 3 books was because I'd read so many James Patterson over the years. I knew what the James Patterson style was. I had an idea. They were set in the world's most glamorous hotel chain. It was a very James Patterson type of setting, and I knew the pace to tell that story. But I'd learned that by working with him for such a long time. And so in terms of working with him, and again, this is the things you learn from him in terms of storytelling. And he was the one that said to me, we're in the entertainment industry, and that's always sort of stuck with me. And I think sometimes books and authors, we like to sort of do ourselves down a little bit, but we should be proud. Books are an entertainment, and we're competing with lots of other entertaining things, and therefore we shouldn't, every single book can be entertaining in a different way. My books are entertaining as you would see a Netflix TV series or something on ITV. But equally, an Ian McEwan would be, it's a great entertainment, but in a literary sense. And we shouldn't shy away from that. And we want people to use their time, their downtime to read books. And that's a brilliant thing. So Jim will always talk about, he's in the entertainment business. And then writing my own books, you have more freedom then, obviously. So you get, with working with James Patterson, you get a brilliant advice, but suddenly then you're on your own. So you definitely have more freedom. And I think certainly in 11 Liars, that you can see that a little bit more probably in terms of the characters. 3 of the main characters are people in their 70s, 2 women, Pamela and Betty. And also then Sam, who's an older journalist. And so I sort of explored older characters, different characters that I guess maybe slightly less likely you'd find in a James Patterson type novel. I was able to sort of, if you like, spend more time. I loved the Pamela Cuthbert character, and she had lived a very different life. Pamela, she's quite a singular person, if you like, and has lived a life alone, and able to explore her personality. So that was probably, you get more freedom to be able to do those kind of things.
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic answer. Thank you. And it sounds like such a great start to a writing career to have someone like James Patterson almost give you like a bit of mentoring, really. So you've got to write in his style, but to have that sort of support to start with is absolutely amazing. And then to go off on your own, knowing you've had that, must have been brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And great advice about the entertainment industry.
Yeah,
I think,
so true.
Well.
I
Really
always say we're competing for people's time. We're not competing with each other. We're competing for people's time. So now our topic today is how do publishers sell books to retailers? And you are the person to speak to, Robert, because as well as being a fantastic author, you work in the sales for one of the big publishers. So could you tell us a little bit about what your job entails on like a day-to-day basis, please?
So correct, I do work in sales for a book publisher, and I have done, as I say, over 20 years for the same publishing company. And so I've done lots of different jobs with over 20 years. You obviously move through from, I started going and repping books, as it were, to different retailers as a key account manager, sold to most of the major booksellers across the UK. And then gradually, as I say, I've stayed in the business for a long time, and now have the joy of running a big sales team, sells books across the UK and across the world, which again is fascinating. I worked for a period of time in international sales, very different market, and we should think about selling. We know English language is fantastic for us because it takes our books around the world, and the opportunities for us to sell books on a global basis are better today than they've been ever before. So I get to, my day job is leading a team, selling lots and lots of books to lots of different places.
And what are the factors that you think make a book sellable to retailers?
In a way, there's always lots of factors, and I guess I would go back to what we were talking about, James Patterson. Number one is the book's got to be entertaining. It's got to engage. people have got to think somebody's going to spend their money on that. They're going to go and spend 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds and buy that book. And I think at times we sort of love to fixate on retailers and buyers, but in a way, all they're doing and all their job is to try and to select or put forward books that they think people will buy, that people will want to read. So I think the number one thing is believing, okay, this is a great book that somebody wants to go on, is going to pick it up. They're going to go into a waterstand and pick it up and turn it over and think, okay, yeah, that sounds good. Or they're going to be in a supermarket, or they're going to see it on Amazon. And so that's the primary thing. Is it's still about the book, and ultimately our most successful books are either amazingly written, or they've got amazing stories, or they've just got that hook that will capture people in and be the characters or whatever it may be. And then after that, hey, of course, I'm going to say, yeah, it needs to be well published. And that's what the publisher's job is. And that can be around the tiny little things, around the shout line or the copy, or the jacket, and just making sure that that it's presented to the buying teams in the right way.
Oh, that's a fantastic answer. Now, I'm just going slightly off tangent from the questions here, but I'd love to know, so obviously working as working in sales and being a writer, when you were writing 12 Secrets and 11 Lies, how much in your head did you hold as you were writing the story, this concept of how your book was then going to be sold? Do you think that your experience changed that process for you versus an author who perhaps wasn't thinking about that?
Strangely enough, no, I don't think so. It's almost like I've got my writer's hat and my day job hat. And also, I should say, I'm not published by the company that I work for, and that was very much a deliberate decision of me and my boss at the company. We should say I work for Penguin, and the company I work for the CEO, and we sort of chatted about it. He knew I was writing it, and we said we wouldn't submit it to Penguin. So it was never even. My agent never sent it to any of the companies within the Penguin Random House group. It was always the case that we're like, no. And it would have been a strange experience, obviously, for somebody in sales that worked for me to be selling my book, and all the weird. So in that sense, therefore, I'm published by, if you like, one of Penguin Random House's biggest rivals in Little Brown and Hachette. And so in a way, I sort of kept away from the sales. The last thing they want is somebody coming from Penguin saying, oh, sell it like this. So I've never, and any sort of sales questions I tend to leave to my agent. And like that, or my writing career happened in the same way as any other. I submitted content to agents. I ended up getting an amazing agent called Juliet Mushins. And Juliet does all of that. So I keep out of the sales. There's the odd time I think, oh, I wouldn't do that, but I'm like, keep out of it.
Yeah, that's very sensible.
And the Little Brown team have done a fantastic job in it. So no, I think I go back to the same thing. I wrote a story that I would think would be entertaining, and like all authors, I think that moment where either an agent or an agent or a publisher reads it for the first time and says, "Oh, I loved your book." And in a way, that's all you're really interested in it. And if only that one person had said it, that would have almost been enough for my. Ultimately, my publisher said to me, "Oh my God, we loved it. We loved 12 Secrets of it." And that's what you're really writing for. And I don't think you can write thinking, okay, it's going to sell in this way, or it's very difficult. It's quite cynical to think, okay, I'm going to write this because I think it's commercial. I think you have to write because you enjoy it and you enjoy the story and you think readers will enjoy it, and then hopefully everything else will fall into place after that.
I think if you think too commercially as well, what the big thing of the moment, by the time you've thought of that and recognized it, the market's moved on anyway, because obviously it takes so long to get a book into shape. So I think it's difficult to kind of write like that. You have to write for the love of it, don't you, and the love of what you're writing.
Yeah, and write what you want to read. I think that's what I try and do. I think, what do I want to read? And that's
and because if you don't want to read it, likely there's nobody else will.
Well, and when it comes to structural edits, you're really going to hate them if you don't enjoy what you're reading. So
definitely.
So when an author gets a traditional book deal, they obviously work closely with the editor and sometimes kind of the marketing and PR teams a bit, but we don't tend to, as authors, spend so much time with the sales team. So in your role, who do you interact with the publishers most when you're trying to sell a book to retailers, and at what stage do you first kind of see the book and kind of get involved in that process?
So all of the people in the sales team that are involved, they'll work very closely with the publishing houses, and lots of, obviously at Penguin Random House we have a huge number of publishing houses, and each one would have different salespeople engaged with them, working with them on their different lists. And so pretty much right from when the book is acquired, a salesperson would be involved, would have a view. They might literally just be a case of reading it, or they might get some input depending on where the hope or expectation is. Would this work in this market? Would this work in a different market? Would it work internationally? And in a way, I always say the job of a really good salesperson is to, again, it's a little bit like the buyers, they're representing their market. So they're not there to give their personal point of view. I don't want salespeople going and editorializing. We've got brilliant editors who will spot a book that is a great book and a real potential in it. But then a really good salesperson is able to explain, okay, how that will or won't land in the market. In a way, they're the voice of the reader, the voice of the consumer. It's like, if I can't get it past buyers, then the likelihood it's not, the buyers are not saying no because they don't, for any other reason than they think it probably isn't going to sell brilliantly. They want books that are going to sell. So yeah, in a way, sales are there to engage in that way. And then as it gets nearer and nearer publication, or nearer us having conversations with retailers, the sales team would get more involved, and making sure that every single book was taken to the market with it's giving it its best opportunity.
And what do you think the most important thing is, if you had to rate something? Is it the cover? Is it like the author's name? Is it the kind of genre it's in? What's or is there just, is it a number of things that
again,
all
there
come
isn't one saying, hey, if it's got Lee
Yeah.
Child or Marion Keyes on the front, it's probably going to sell. And they're both brilliant authors and brilliant at what they do. And so in a way, they've earned that place. Both Lee and Marion are incredible writers and have delivered consistently for such a long period of time. And so sometimes, there are author names that we know that are so well established, but there's a reason why. There's a reason why it's a little bit like footballers. The reason why the most famous footballers are famous is because they're probably the best. There's a reason why the best authors, the most famous authors, are actually brilliant at what they do. Marion's book still now. We had Rachel again last year, and just amazing. And so she just delivers for her readership in the same way that Lee Child does, or James Madison. But then of course there's lots of other different factors at play, and sometimes say a jacket could just catch somebody's eye in terms of a buyer, and sales could feed into that. But equally, a huge amount of the time it's about, again, it goes back to the books, and I think probably more and more now it is about people engaging with the writing. And the last 12 months, Lessons in Chemistry has been obviously a huge breakout success. And that was all about people reading it from the very beginning, and people loving that book and loving that character. And that's why that book sold.
And 6:30 as well was a great character in that book. It's the dog.
Yes. Yes, very much.
So this is quite a simple question, but I think one that I'm really interested to know the answer to. So when the sales team sell to retailers, do the sales team suggest the number of copies the retailers take, or do the retailers be like, oh, we'll take 50, or like we'll take 500?
I think
these sort of a negotiation.
I think these days it's probably more led by the retailer, and the world has changed a little bit. So the last 5-10 years is nobody wants to sort of put lots of books in retailers that then don't sell, and our supply chain and publisher supply chains are much quicker, so you can turn around reprints very quickly. So hey, you want a book to get a good presence, but after that, if a book is selling, people can come back and we can turn books around very quickly. And so I don't worry too much about, okay, what's the initial number going in. It's about how it sells in those first few weeks, and trying to keep that momentum going. A good retailer, if a book is selling, will want to keep it on sale, and they won't want to be short. And so it's not necessarily just about what somebody takes at the very beginning.
That's interesting. And you've obviously previously worked in ASDA as a book buyer, so kind of from the other side of things. And many of our listeners probably don't realise that authors generally are super happy if their book gets taken by a supermarket, because the sell-in figures tend to be in much larger volumes than kind of indie shops or Waterstones. But obviously, we're also very much aware that supermarket space, shelf space, is now shrinking. And so, what do you think that supermarkets specifically look for when they're going to stock a book?
I think each of the supermarkets knows their customer across the whole of, be your Asda, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Lidl, whoever you are, you know your consumer who's kind of come in. So if you're a buyer there, you're trained to think, okay, I'm going to buy products that are going to appeal to my consumer. And so we can see that there's probably a slight difference between a book that really might fly in Asda versus one that might fly in Sainsbury's. It's not the exact same consumer going in. But then, so that's what they're looking for, something that's going to connect with the people who come and shop in their stores. And that can be lessons in chemistry, and that's done amazingly well in all the supermarkets. Or it might be the new Dilly Court saga coming from Harper Collins, who also does amazingly well in the supermarkets, and they do great with saga authors, and they can reach a different readership. And I go back to my James Patterson. If somebody's entertained and they love reading sagas, fantastic, is my view. But they might pick that up in Asda or Tesco. But equally, if you're going to buy a different book, you might go to Waterstones and buy something very different. But hey, we're a broad church in the book publishing world, and there's something for everybody, I would say.
Indeed.
That's so true. And it's really tough, as you say. Supermarkets generally will only take a book for 2 to 3 weeks normally, and then if it's selling well, they'll obviously carry on, as you said. If a book isn't selling that well in a supermarket, does that affect then the author's chances of having another book with the supermarket like the following year?
Hey, you'd have to ask them, I think. But again, as I say, they're going to look for books or any product that works for their customers. So if you're going to go this weekend, buy stuff for Easter, they'll want the Easter eggs that are going to sell. And that's what their business is. And so the same would apply to books. So, hey, one year they might give it a go. It didn't work. Doesn't mean they won't give it again and again. If it comes in again, it's got a great jacket, it's a great hook. They feel, okay, let's give this a go. But then if something just doesn't work, doesn't connect with their consumers and with their customers, there's a point where they're going to say, okay, it's not for us. Doesn't mean it's not a great book, but there's a certain point where they're running businesses like, oh, we've got to try something else in that space.
Yeah, that's so true. I think it's really important to remember that, because I think when I've not had supermarkets before, I have felt really disappointed, but I hadn't really appreciated that what you're saying is that each supermarket is really just looking to sell to their shoppers, and so the book just isn't quite the right fit for them. It doesn't mean it's not a great book, and that's, I think, something to really bear in mind, I think, for us authors.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And have you ever asked for something to change in a book after edits have been done? So obviously we're changing them all the time in terms of, if we talk to our editor who comes up with the structural edits, copy edits, that all changes. But in terms of kind of from the sales side of things, do sales ever say, look, we hate this cover, or we hate what's in the book and you need to change the ending or something like that? Or do sales not get involved in that so much?
In terms of what's between the covers, no. In my 20 years, I don't think I can ever think of a conversation where we said, okay, let's change the content.
Right.
In the initial acquisition, they might be part of a conversation around the book itself. But I don't. Ultimately, as we all know, that relationship between the editor, the publishing editor, and the author is key, if you like, and that is about the creation and the final delivery of the book. It doesn't mean the editor's not aware of conversations in the background, and that might influence them, but absolutely, I think that relationship is sacrosanct between editor and author. And then in terms of how it's presented, it's much more of a team effort, if you like. So publishing is, and in fact, in some of my acknowledgements that I say, it's a funny thing to say, but writing and publishing a book is a team effort. And that comes down to the marketing, publicity, the sales, and all the teams, the production, the art departments. And so there's lots of people then having an input. And in a way that's sort of led and coordinated by your editor. But there's certain points in the process where actually sales and marketing might have a bigger say in the publishing, because hey, all the publicity team think they can maximize publicity by doing X, Y, or Z. And so that can shift things in a different direction. And hey, yeah, people always love to talk about covers. Again, as a team, as a publishing team, you want to get what you think is the right jacket, and hey, every single time. And we spend a huge amount of time and money in terms of that. But then you might take it out to the buyers into the market or to reader panels, and it's like, oh, they're not seeing quite what we thought they were going to see. Then you're going to make a call. Either you've got something that you really believe in, and you're like, no, we're really going to stick with this because we think it's the right thing. And sometimes there's a conversation with an author. Or it's recognizing, okay, nobody's right all the time, and maybe we haven't quite landed what we thought we were going to get. And at that point, you take on board the feedback and think, okay, could we do it slightly differently? And it's a little bit, again, it doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's just not connecting in quite the way that you'd imagined it might connect. And again, it goes back to my own experience very much. I've sort of okay, it's Little Browns to do. The last thing is in me is sticking my nose in. So it's the Little Brown team, and it's up to them to lead that direction. A brilliant art designer came up with the 2 jackets, and
they're fabulous covers.
Great series look, really good look. And that's really up to them, and so I try not to interfere. But yeah, as an author from the outside, because it's so difficult, you're sort of looking and thinking, oh my god. But my general
is it going to be
advice,
okay? Yeah.
My general advice would be, if a publisher says, oh, we want to change this, or we want to do it slightly differently, they're not saying that for the hell of it. And they've published a lot of books, and so I would say, okay, most of the time I would say go with your publisher. In a way, that's what they're paid to do. That's their business.
Yeah, 100%.
Is to make books a success. So
yeah, we're paid to write the books. They can do the rest.
Exactly. Yeah.
So true.
So you've worked on both sides, Robert. You're a fantastic author with 11 Lives, which is out now, and you work in the sales team at Penguin. And I'd be interested to pick your brains a little bit on the publishing industry, just from your own personal viewpoint. So we've seen quite a lot of changes recently with the shrinking shelf space. And I'd love to hear what you think might be coming next for us in the landscape, because we're seeing, big authors dominating the charts like Colleen Hoover and Richard Osmond. And we've also got the air fryers now taking over, storming those charts, stealing those positions from us.
I just saw in the books, somebody else has just written one as well. And you're just like, oh, another air fryer.
Those TikTok stars. So I just wondered, what can we expect next, do you think, just from your opinion? And is it more subscription boxes which are now becoming much more of a big thing? Where are we? Where should we be looking next?
Where are we going to go next? I haven't got, my goodness, who knows? It's impossible to know the future. And you're right. I think I would say publishing is a great industry, and you think how many books still now are published in the UK and around the world. Every month there's new books, which is fantastic. And in a way, the books are still in a healthy state. Both adult and children's books as well. A huge amount of children's new books that we publish still. And Waterstones continues to prosper on the high street, and there's more independents now than there were back in 2018. WH Smith Travel does an amazing job of selling physical books through the airports. We've talked about the supermarkets, but then obviously, Amazon is a huge player as well. And so we're in a way, we're lucky to have so many ways to reach readers. And there are always going to be those very big ones at the top. And I think that's probably always been the case, that if it wasn't Colleen Hoover now, you go back 20 years, it was Danielle Steele, and 20 years before that it was Barbara Taylor Bradford or whatever. There's always been those huge names that dominated. We probably just see it more now because of social media and because of TikTok, but the big names have always been there. Dan Brown, when you go back, was in Richard Osmond, and so there's always those massive names that have the runaway. I think, I was lucky enough back in 2012, I think, worked on E.L. James and worked a lot on 50 Shades, and again, you think of those numbers are just insane. And that was before, in a way, almost before certainly the TikTok world and quite that same connection in terms of social media. So there's always going to be something. But it doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities there. Brilliant thing about Amazon is there is no shelf space there. They sell pretty much everything. So books can get everywhere. And we sell lots and lots of physical books, which is great. And the physical book is incredibly robust, and readers have certainly gone back to, and again, touching on the new TikTok generation, if you like, they want the physical book, which is great. But then there's also lots of people that read in ebook. But even more so now, people that want to buy on audio and listen on audio. And so that is an expanding market as well. So there's lots of different ways to get to readers and listeners, and I say around the world as well. So we should broaden our horizons, if you like. Opportunities are endless. A little bit the lesson to publishers as well is don't fixate just on the immediate bestsellers. They're always going to be there. But a book can be successful over a period of time, reaching lots of readers in lots of different ways. And my own experience on 12 Secrets, although it did great in paperback, but it sold lots of ebooks, reached readers in different ways as well over a different period of time. And we love to think about everybody buying it, going back to publication day on that day. But people will discover books in the 1 year, 2 years following publication. And if you haven't read it, it's new to you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
so
very
true. Uplifting answer. Thank you. I think as you say, being on social media and being in the industry, I think you can feel a bit doom and gloom about things, but it's really fantastic to hear from the sales side of things that there's more opportunities now to get your book out there than ever before, in fact. So it's really good.
Yes,
definitely.
And so we'd just like to ask you if there's anything you've read recently that you'd really recommend.
Oh, that's a good question. I spent so much time writing it. I read, now I feel bad, I should have thought of this. I read the new Cara Hunter, and I haven't got the title. I should have got the title in my mind, which is just, actually, she's now published by Harper Collins. And it's the most amazing piece of work because it's written as if it is like a Netflix TV documentary. And you see it all in scripts and extracts and the pulling together of it, the piece of work that has been done to do it. Oh my goodness. So both
I enjoyed that. If you enjoyed that, Robert, you've got to read Lauren's one, because Lauren's latest, The Ugly Truth, which you can probably see behind her, is again Netflix.
A Netflix documentary.
Read it, Lauren.
So it's a very popular medium, I think.
At the moment, I just started the new book by Catherine Ryan Howard. The Trap.
I'm loving it. I loved it.
The Trap.
One of the best.
Brilliant. It's fantastic. It's again lots of twists and turns. And so I'm loving Catherine's new book, which I think is out later this year as well. So there's 2 books for this year.
I was lucky enough. We're with the same editors. I was lucky enough to get my hands on an early copy. What about you, Nikki? What have you been reading?
I've just read one. This is Karen Hamilton's new one. Don't know if you can see that. It's called The Contest, the trip of a lifetime and a prize worth killing for, with a lovely kind of swimming pool, infinity pool on the front. I love the proof cover. It's about a group of people who go trekking up Mount Kilimanjaro, 2 teams, for a work-related event, and one's kind of got to get to the top first, but there's loads of kind of family secrets and people dying and a killer in their midst kind of thing. Really enjoyed that. So
I'm loving how the exotic thriller genre has taken on the contest reality TV genre, and like they've merged, and there's been a few actually. Ruth Kelly's got one, The Villa, coming out. So really interesting, and I am afraid I cannot add anything this week, which is a bit bad for me, but it's because I've been reading lots of my mentees' books, and also I'm reading a really early book from a friend of mine, Rob Parker. He's got a book coming out at some point. I don't even know when it's coming out, but I'm just lucky enough to get my hands on a copy because I'm a big fan of his. So I can't even tell you anything about it, but it's brilliant. So I've got nothing to recommend.
Well, I think actually that's probably time to draw everything to a close now. So I think Lauren and I would love to carry on talking to you for probably another 2 hours at least, Robin. We'd be grilling you with all our questions. But thank you ever so much for coming along today to talk to us. And obviously your latest book, 11 Liars, is out now in hardback. So get out to the shops and grab yourself a copy, people, because it's brilliant.
Yes, it really is a fantastic investigative thriller. So it has been lovely. Thank you so much, Robert. Next week there won't be an episode of In Suspense because we are taking a little break for the rest of April, I believe, and we will be back with the amazing Will Dean at the start of our next series, which we're planning today, so we haven't even got a date for that yet. We are also going to be taking a break from minisodes in our next series, so we have got a fantastic one lined up for the autumn, and if you do have any suggestions for a minisode expert, do get in touch because we're always interested to hear what people would like to hear about, and do get in touch on our social media channels if you have any topics you'd like us to cover. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, then please rate and review on whatever platform you're listening on. And that's it from us. So that leaves me with the final job of saying goodbye from Robert. Thank you so much, and goodbye. And goodbye from Nikki.
Bye.
And goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Bye.